to get my
Oh,
chair.
yeah, you're good, buddy. Go for it.
All right. Nana, we're live with Mike right now.
That's not a real landmark.
Where's the weird chair?
You put it right. It's not a good seat, right? So when you're
It
doing
was 3 chairs. What happened to the other one?
okay, so each stanza. So the second stanza tells us a little more. What does the second stanza tell us? That we're dreaming. The second stanza tells us that we're dreaming. That's what
So let me go back. Now, let me go back. Hey, worry about that. All right.
All right, buddy.
I'm back. I'm sorry for all this. Me always being so nice.
Darrion, you're good. But hey, you know what? You're learning, right?
Yeah, I'm learning, man. I'm just starting out, so we just starting out. Right now, we have nobody tuning. It's okay. We're just starting out again, like you said.
Hey, that's okay.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started and put up the questions.
Okay.
What is up, Hope Online family? How y'all doing? It's Darrion here. And say I'm going live with perhaps greatest ever in Mr. Mike Forrester, and host of Living Fearless Say Pod. Please introduce yourself, Mike.
Well, hello, everyone. Darrion, thank you very much for that introduction. Let's be praying God gives me that ability to step into what you're describing, my friend.
Let's be praying God gives me that ability to step into what you're describing, my friend.
So I'm a men's transformation coach. What happened to facilitate that was almost blew apart my marriage and my relationship with my children. And now at this point, I have a vibrant, strong, healthy marriage and great relationship with my adult children. And so from that, I know that other men can experience that, and the space that we create in our health.
Oh,
Was that where the feedback was coming from?
that's just
Was that
wonderful.
where the feedback was coming from?
Man, yeah, my brother, he's being very annoying right now. Derek, please stop. Go. Lord. And listen, y'all, I just feel like we're gonna touch a lot of lives today. A lot of child, a lot of adult trauma, you know. And like speaking of it, a lot of people from my school.
Are you still there, Darrion?
Sorry. Yeah, I had to speak to my brother for a minute. He's getting on my nerves just a little bit. So a lot of people from my school, you know, they've been so much, just people in general. These past 2 years have been a lot for everyone, you know.
Yes.
And I feel like we all just need that extra push and help.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's one of those of give yourself grace. We can be really hypercritical of ourselves, like the expectations we have for ourselves, and being able to step back and go, you know, like if you and I were classmates, right, Darrion? So if I look at you and I'm able to give you grace and say like, hey, Darrion's doing great and you're walking through stuff, but then I look at myself and I'm critical of how things are going for me, then there's an opportunity there to give myself that same grace, that same compassion, right? So it's often easy to be able to look and go, hey, here's Darrion. How would I perceive Darrion in the same situation? And we'll often find that we'll give you the gratitude, you know, like we'll give you that space to say like, hey, you're doing a great job. So putting ourselves in somebody else's position is often very helpful to then giving ourselves that same space to, you know, to just not be critical, to be gracious. So when you're being hard on yourself, just try switching situations and place that in, you know, somebody else in that role and see if your reaction is the same. And that's a good litmus test, to see, are we just being hard on ourselves unnecessarily?
Right. It's so crazy because a lot of us, like including myself, we're all so self-conscious.
Mm-hmm.
And we just got to remind ourselves sometimes, listen, you have the potential, and you can be who you want to be. Like, no need to try to hide yourself.
Well, and I mean, there's none of us that are walking around perfect, but I was guilty of this, man. I was expecting myself to be perfect, and anything less than that, I was just being hard. I was being cruel to myself, and that's not needed. There's going to be people that are hurt in the world that lash out, and we'll be the
Right.
recipients of that oftentimes. And so one is protecting ourselves from that kind of speech, but often we need to also protect ourselves from those, degrading, just kind of demeaning and cruel talk that we would give to ourselves. I don't know about you, man, but like when I would drop something or drop the jug of orange juice, right? It'd be like, oh, why are you an idiot? And that
Right.
kind of stuff, we're being mean. We don't, there's enough opportunity to get that kind of stuff without doing it to ourselves. So it's like, oops,
Right.
that was an accident, right? So just watch what you say about yourself, and then do your best to see who it is that's talking to you. If there's people that
Right.
are speaking negatively about you, give yourself the space to stay distant from them, right? Not everybody that's around us is good for us. So I
Right.
think if you look at, like who your classmates are, right, Darrion, or like who I work with, not everybody should have the same power to speak to me. Their intentions aren't the same. And, unfortunately, they may not be in as healthy a place as we would want them to be. So be
Right.
aware of who you're allowing to speak into your life, into who you're being, and just guard yourself. There's a great book by Dr. Henry Cloud called Boundaries. And just as the title says, it's putting boundaries in and around ourselves, like you would expect for like a castle, right? People can get to different areas. Well, be mindful of who you're allowing into that inner part to be able to speak to your heart, to speak into your mind.
Yeah, that's wonderful words. Wonderful.
I appreciate
And let me tell you something, Mike. I have, when I first heard your podcast, man, I was like, oh my goodness, this is wonderful.
Well, I appreciate it, Darrion. It honestly, man, it comes from having walked it out. Because, like I said, I almost blew apart my marriage, my relationship with my children. They're now adults, and there's going to be stuff, man, that we don't agree with our parents. But
Yeah.
when we walk away from that stuff and, we're carrying the hurt and the harmful patterns that we learned,
Right.
into our children and our relationships, with our spouses, or like that you'd be taking and carrying out, to school or, with your family. It's like we need to be mindful of who we are, and what we're doing to those around us. And having almost destroyed those relationships because of who I was, that childhood trauma that I carried into adulthood, the sooner we start healing ourselves and being mindful of what we're listening to, God doesn't want us to hurt those around us, right? That's not at all his
Right.
intention. But if we're not aware of what we're doing, if we're not aware of what's coming out of our mouth, what we're thinking in our head and communicating around us, then we're going to hurt the people around us. And that's not the first thing we want to do. So watching what we do is the first step on that path.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, like honestly, I'm reading the description of your podcast and listening to your podcast, and you said I've learned that you've been through a lot, man. And what I've learned just um and just experiencing it myself, hurt people, hurt people, hurt people, hurt people. And if you
Yes.
and if y'all tune in every week, you always people hurt people.
Yeah.
And my question is for you: what caused emotionally?
Can you repeat that one for me, bud?
What caused you to stop hurting your family emotionally?
Oh man. So if going back, it was one of those, Darrion, like I didn't want to hurt my family. That was never my intention. Like, you know, being a dad, I don't want to hurt my daughters. I didn't want to hurt my son or my wife, right? That was never something that was a goal. But the problem was from how I was behaving and showing up and interacting with them, that was exactly what I was doing. The problem was me.
Right.
And so my heart, my head, I was programmed, you know, like I was told as a kid, like if I failed, that made me a failure. And that's not true. None of us are perfect. I mean, that's been laid out. That's a truth that, you know, so expecting something where it's like, I'm going to be perfect, I'm not going to mess up. Well, that just causes you to play small, you know, to not step out into the things like God has called us to, right? You know, there's going to be those opportunities to step out that are insecure, that are beyond what we feel comfortable doing. Well, when my first knee-jerk reaction is, if there's a possibility of failing, I don't want to do this, you know, because I don't want to be a failure. You can imagine I'm communicating and training my children in that. And when I'm hurt or I'm from a place of insecurity, then I'm also trying to control my environment. And if my environment is my home, then I'm working to manipulate and control my children. As I look down that path, I'm like, this is not something I want to continue teaching my grandchildren. I don't want them feeling out this, you know, that being what they inherit. And so I had to step back and go, I need to address me. And then from that, I could work on my own healing. And from that then healed the relationships. So it was being aware of what was going on around me. Does that make sense?
And honestly, man, in childhood, basically teach us you've got to fit this, you this. If you don't do this, you can get this. And I want to point out to everybody who's watching who feels like that, as Mike, don't have to be perfect. It is okay to mess up. And you know, like honestly, I said before, we're all self-conscious. And my grandmother's always telling me, don't be so self-conscious. I am. I'm always talking about, you know, myself, how I get really angry at myself. And thank you for that. It just taught me a lot. I should know before messing up.
Well, and so the question would be like, why are we being so hard on ourselves? Because if your expectation of yourself is different than what you would expect of me, like what's at the core of that? You know, are you trying to expect of yourself that you're going to be perfect and you're going to have a higher level because you don't want somebody else to perceive you in another way, or that in order to measure up and your worth is going to be seen in a specific way, that you have to perform at this level? Dude, I was guilty of that. You know, that was where I was hypercritical of myself. It wasn't realistic. And so there's nothing wrong with being aware, striving for your best. I mean, I think that's healthy. You know, you want to do your best. You want to have the optimal results. But when it doesn't happen that way, how are you dealing with it? What kind of space are you giving yourself to be realistic, right? If I have an expectation that I'm going to jump in the same way, getting on the basketball court and jumping like Michael Jordan, that ain't going to happen. Like you look at all the hours that he has put in, right? He has trained
Right.
specifically for that. And if he held himself to such a high expectation of, I'm not going to miss shots, he wouldn't have made all the shots that he has. If you go back and look at his statistics, the reason he's, such like a greatest of all times is because he created the grace and the willingness for himself just to go out there and I'm going to try, because it's just like Babe Ruth with baseball. He was a home run hitter
Right.
because he struck out so much. He was willing to not perform at the same degree, right, as other people. He went out there, gave it 100%, knowing that not every swing of the bat is going to be a home run. And until you're swinging for the fences or you're shooting for that 3-pointer, that seems too far, unless we're doing that and pushing our boundaries, expecting to just do our best, we're going to hold ourselves back. And so if you want to continue being able to do that and not shutting yourself down, you have to also be able to, like, okay, I didn't make that basket. I didn't make the home run. I didn't get the A on this homework, or I didn't get that project in on time. And to be able to say, what could I have done differently? Because if we don't learn from our attempts that didn't work out the way that we wanted them to, then we won't take the bigger risk. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, it makes total sense. Yeah. Like I said, right now the whole world has faced so much trauma and so on. Right now, there's a lot of people who, like a lot of children who got trauma,
Yeah.
and I don't even know a few people who, as children, they were faced with all that. And as humans, take what we've learned as children or what we've endured as children and get from childhood to adulthood. And I want to know how does childhood influence our personal and professional decision-making process?
Man, you would think that it's like, oh, that was back then. Man, it sticks with you. So like I talked about with my children and my wife and almost destroying those relationships, right? It was playing out from a mindset that because of the abuse I went through, I had to protect myself. So I didn't trust them. And I don't know, if you've had relationships where people aren't trusting you, but in those kind of relationships, it doesn't grow like any closer, right? There's always that barrier. There's always that hesitancy. But I was angry because of the stuff that went on. It wasn't right. And I'm not saying it was, but like the lack of forgiveness, right? The anger I had towards my parents and the stuff that went on then carried over into how I parented. And so I swore that I would never be my parents. I wasn't going to do the same kind of thing to my kids. Dude, Darrion, I repeated the exact pattern. I became a clone. And, just I ended up hurting my kids, like I said. And that was never my intention. I love my kids. That wasn't a question. But the way that I felt so insecure, that I was lacking the worth, that I was angry and didn't feel like I had control, that stuff all showed up in me trying to control and manipulate them. And so if life felt out of control, like it was chaotic and spiraling, I would try and grasp and put into place what I could. Well, it's easier to manipulate people than it is to manipulate situations. And so that was the default that I went to. And again, it's not anything that's an intention. I'm grateful that my kids were forgiving and have reconciled, like there's been that reconciliation, there's been that healing. And that was honestly what helped me to forgive my parents, because I hated my parents. And I looked at it and I'm like, what would I want my kids to do with me? Well, obviously I want them to forgive me. So that was what really was the catalyst for me looking back at my past as a child and going, how do I want to, treat my parents? Okay. It doesn't make it right, but I need to forgive them to free myself, because otherwise it's like, you see those guys on TV, they're like the strong men and they're pulling a bus, right? So if you take that same guy and you put him in a 500-yard dash, he is not going to be the one winning that race.
Right.
The more unforgiveness that we have, it weighs us down. So what's that, Darrion?
And it's that's right, man. It's that unforgiveness that we have, and not just in ourselves but other people, it really can weigh us down.
Yeah. The hardest part, and you already touched on this, my friend, is forgiving ourselves. I was able to forgive everybody around me, but like that critical, that expectation, like you've talked about, that you have on yourself, that was what I needed to let go in order to forgive myself and grow from that, because that unforgiveness of myself was still a limiting thing. Hey, maybe now it's not a bus, but I'm trying to pull, like an SUV. It's smaller, it's easier, but I'm still not able to be fully me that's free. And it's not like God's looking for us to be shackled. He wants us to be free.
Right.
We're gonna have growth, there's gonna be struggle. I'm not saying we won't, but it's like his blood sanctifies us, right? It gives us freedom.
Yeah.
And I was in essence taking the place of God in saying that I'm not worthy to be free of this. And there's none of us, I think, that intentionally want to put ourselves in the place of Christ, that want to play God. But that's exactly what we do when we put ourselves in a place of slavery to that unforgiveness.
Yeah. Yes, and it's so like I said, I'm gonna say that's true all through this all through this interview, because it's like a lot of the stuff that you're bringing up
Mm-hmm.
is really like some of the things that I've seen other people face, or I've just heard, and that's one of the reasons why I talk to you, because it's like my like this is that I feel like this is gonna help a lot of people.
Yeah. And I mean, you're a shepherd, Darrion, right? So you're looking to help people be whole, healed, to love from their heart. You don't want to see people hurt. And oftentimes it's letting go of what has been in our past that frees us up to be everything today, that God's calling us to. I can't love, much less myself, but my family or my friends or those in my community, when I'm hurt, when I'm suspect, right? When everything that I'm looking at, what's Darrion's motive of this? If I'm holding you suspect, there's not that love, there's not that trust, and so the relationship will never develop. And so until I create space for me, for my healing, everything around me is going to suffer. My relationship with my siblings, my relationship with my parents, my spouse, my children, whatever season of life that you're in, until you address you, the things around you will suffer because of that hurt.
Yeah. And I just want to real quick, I want to say, it's about, and another thing, y'all, there's about is telling ourselves our goals. We set goals. It's important. We can all say that setting goals are important. I mean, like, just even knowing, like, okay, if I do this, I can get this. So, like, every when I get up there and I preach, I say, okay, guys, so this is what God is at this moment. This is what he's going to be today. And then this is what we're going to learn from this. And this is what we're going to become after today's service. So I'm giving my congregation I'm giving them affirmations. And I'm saying basically how after the service, they'll be transformed, or we're going to try to transform them and change their life after that sermon. And some of them probably wonder why. So the question is, how do we use affirmations to shape our future self?
We're already using affirmations without realizing it, because when we look at, what somebody said about us and we believe that and hold on to it, that's an affirmation. It's just a negative one. So you can take beliefs about who you want to be. Like if you sat down and you said, okay, where do I want to be, in 3 months? What do I want, like Darrion, for like you as far as school? Hey, what do I want my grades to look like? What do I want, the congregation to feel? How do I want to be as a pastor for, like your congregation? Hey, how do I want to show up within like my family, my business, work, whatever the environment may be, is being able to look at it and put ourselves in that place. Then being able to see those characteristics, how we show up there. And then just like you're telling them, create a positive statement about it. You can take scripture and just how, you go through the different fruits of the Spirit. If you call each of those out and put it about yourself, fantastic. Like scripture can be placed as affirmations, just as easily as a characteristic, right? The other thing that we can do is it's called an affirmation. So instead of an I, you can create it with an O, but it's created as a question that starts with why. And just as like we may make off kind of innocent statements, but they're really negative, of like, we go back to that jar, or excuse me, the container of orange juice. Why am I such an idiot, right? We're already creating an affirmation in a negative state. But instead, if you said, why am I so loving? Why do I care for my spouse so well? Why am I so generous with my time with my children, right? You're asking a why question. And what it does is it sends your brain looking for like how you're doing that. So it's almost like when you watch a TV series, right? And so it's Friday night. If there's something on TV and they end it after that, the 30 minutes or hour, whatever it is, at the end, you're left wondering what's going to happen in the next episode. Well, that's the same thing you're doing in asking that affirmation with the why statement. Your brain is going looking out there of, why am I able to do this? And it goes looking to find the solution. So that's another thing that you can add to that to help you out to put yourself in a different place, other than how you might be seeing yourself as lacking in an area, is work the affirmations with the affirmations.
Yeah. Just the goals, like you made the point. We just got goals, and then tell ourselves, well, I want this. If I want this, then I've got to do this to get to this. If I want, like some of y'all here, some of you guys, you may want to be the biggest pop star there. So you may say, you know what? If I want to be the biggest pop star and win that Grammy, I've got to get in the studio, got to sing, I got to do my best. Mm-hmm. Telling ourselves we will be in the future definitely helps.
And if you look at that, like you're talking about setting goals to be a rock star, right? What are the habits and the practices that get you there? So setting the goal is great, but what do you need to do on a daily basis to take those steps to get you closer? It's if you want to be a pop star, are you wanting to play guitar? Are you wanting to play drums? Are you wanting to sing? Well, if any of those things are going to take practice, right? The people that we're seeing did not all of a sudden get out of bed and go, hey, I want to be able to do this. And they were there.
Right.
It took practice, just like we talked with Michael Jordan. Man, Michael Jordan did not roll out of bed on a Wednesday and go, hey, I'm going to go in the NBA on a Friday and shoot hoops. He had to take and go, okay, this is where I want to be. And I can see myself there. You'll hear lots of sports athletes, if they're running track, they imagine themselves running that race. Michael Jordan, he'd see himself making those baskets, right? It's envisioning yourself seeing the result come about. But he also went out and did the practice. He went down to the court. He shot those hoops. He threw the balls, man. I mean, not all of them were in place, but you got to give yourself the space to take the chance to put the balls up there, to make the hoops. All of them aren't going to make it. Be considerate, like that hypercriticality we've talked about. Give yourself space, but you have to put in the practice. And so when you're making the goals, like Darrion, like you talked about, make those goals, and then what practices get you, what habits get you to that point, and then implement those. And there's nothing like writing them down. So there's a great way to do it. Make an ideal week. I mean, Darrion, we already know, it's like, as an adult, you're going to be going to work, usually 9 to 5. As a student, you're going to be going to school with inside of that time frame, whether it's 8 to 3 or whatever the case may be. That time is taken up. But what does the rest of your day look like? So if you get back from school, let's say at 5:30, right? Okay, I still have my evening and I also have the morning. What am I filling up in those time frames? And put your habits in place. So, like for us and your congregation, hey, where does my devotion time go? Where is my Bible reading? Where's my prayer time that I'm putting my heart out for God, but I'm also waiting to hear from Him. So just like any kind of relationship, Darrion, you hang out with your friends, man. If we don't hang out with God, what kind of friendship do we have there?
Right.
So
Right.
we have to be intentional, right?
Yeah, definitely. Listen, that we just got a comment that you're very knowledgeable. They said this is very knowledgeable. Up here.
I appreciate it, Stingray. Thank you, man.
Ray. He said this is very knowledgeable, and it is. These are the conversations I drop some knowledge, man.
And make sure you implement
it. A lot.
You know what I'm saying? Like, make sure you implement it, because it's like, if put it in the place of, if we read the Bible and then we don't carry out what it tells us to do, how much are we living out as like Christ-like, right? So if I read the Bible and it says love your neighbor, but I'm yelling at my neighbor, I'm just being really hateful, how much is that being Christ-like? It's not. So it's getting the knowledge and then following through with it. So yeah, they go hand in hand.
Yeah. You can't knowledge, and they don't, like what we say, if we can't.
Yeah.
If we can't.
There's
purchase it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, in order for you to preach your sermon and to bring that knowledge, you have to do the study, right? And so it's that same kind of thing. We can't live as full embodied loving Christians unless we're studying and having that relationship and then working it out. So
I just every week, because I'm able, he forced me to live out the message before I preach on Sunday. So like last week, being a brand, and I would live out just being able to give everything entirely to God, knowing that I can't really do anything without order and taking place and doing
And it's,
Yeah,
I
and
mean, it's
like
challenging when you get that opportunity. Do you want to step into it where it's like, because I don't know about you, but God doesn't seem to put the easy stuff in my path. It's like, okay, great, we're gonna stretch you a little bit. So, but you have a choice. Do you
right,
want to step into it, or are you gonna like back away and take the easy route? And our growth and opportunity comes from
right.
stepping in, where it's like, okay, great, this is uncomfortable, but what am I going to learn? God, what are you trying to teach me through this?
Yeah, yeah. Like right, we all of it has been struggling. We've been back and forth Christian, atheist, Buddhist, all everything. Like we have forth with religion beliefs, and but a lot of what you know is like, can you beliefs and impact? Can you explain beliefs and impact?
You were breaking up there. I'm sorry, Darrion. Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, beliefs and impact.
So a limiting belief would be something that somebody has told you or you've experienced that helps you to play small, like where you go, I can never, um, I can never learn Greek, right? Or I can never be disciplined to read my Bible in the morning, or anything along those lines, where you're saying a message that doesn't allow you to step into what you're wanting to. So if you're, we'll take it for me, right? You touched on one of my things when you were talking about being organized. If I say that, hey, I can never be organized, or I'm not an organized person, I'm making a statement about how I show up that's limiting. It's not one of, hey, you know what? I am an organized person. How, why is it that I'm organized? Where you're setting yourself up for that growth. So instead of saying, I'm not organized, it's realizing, okay, I wasn't organized for this opportunity, but what can I do differently, either, the next time around, or as a habit going forward, that puts me in a place that I will be able to be organized. Because like when I'm not organized, man, I'm stressed, I'm feeling pressure, I don't show up as fully engaged or as much as I want, right? So instead of 100%, I may show up 80 or 70%. So I'm not giving my all, but it sure as heck drains me, because all that stress and that chaos, it's pulling, my energy and just the activity level from me. So being mindful and aware of what you're saying, and then going, is that true? Is that what I want to be true? Even, and then looking at it, no, it's not. Okay, what do I need to say differently? How do I need to talk about myself or what I'm doing or not doing? And then looking at, how do you want to appear? Like you talked about affirmations, coupling that with affirmations, and then looking to see, okay, how do I want to show up? What can I do differently? Like if you're saying, I'm not a reader, but yet you want to read, okay, how can I get to that point of being a reader? What habits can I set in place, and what beliefs can I replace these ones that are limiting or negative? And so we're in the place of control. It's going to be work. Don't get me wrong. It's not like you're going to be like all of a sudden, hey, I see myself as this and it's done. It still takes the effort. It's like going to the gym. Just because I want to look like The Rock, doesn't mean that because I go to the gym and I do, upper body, that I'm going to be looking like The Rock. It takes time to get there. I'm working to lose weight. I've lost weight. I'm a third of my way down. I've still got a direction to go. Just, I need to keep the foot on the pedal. I need to stay in my habits. Same kind of thing if you want to get to somewhere else. Keep
Yeah,
pushing through.
yeah, yeah. Amen to.
Does that help you, Darrion? Darrion, are you there? Okay, there we go. Gotcha. Yeah, he's back, Stingray. We're good, man. So having faith in yourself is one of those of just stepping back and going, do I believe I can get there? And maybe you can't get there today, but do you believe that you can achieve that point, right? Did Michael Jordan believe that he could become the player that he is? Not on day one, but he had a goal of where he could reach to, right? And all along that process of becoming who we know him to be, he kept setting a goal further and further down the road, right? Seeing himself as progressing, as being a better player. And it's the same thing like, hey, if I'm in school, maybe I'm a C student. You know, I'm not really been applying myself, or I'm struggling with something in school. And dude, I barely graduated high school, so true story. But when I got to college, it was seeing myself differently and being able to step into that, right? So in the beginning, it meant working more hours, you know, to try and learn stuff. It meant having somebody to help me along the way, you know, that understood the concept. We're not on this journey alone. And the places that we struggle, we're not the only ones struggling with that. But it's being able to ask for help along the way and continuing to see that we're not stuck where we are today, regardless of how frustrating or, you know, disappointing or anything it might be. Today and our past does not make tomorrow for us. We can set the different patterns. You know, if I had stopped with that, I would have still been the same father and husband I was before. And so once we start reaching out and learning, hey, I want to be proficient, I want to be good in this area. What do I need to do? Whether it's books, whether it's a podcast, TV, you know, somebody that you're meeting with, you know, like a mentor, a friend that does have that, it's understanding this is how I get there and asking people to come along that journey with you. That's okay. Mhm. Yeah. And I mean, it's hearing that stuff, looking for wise counsel, right? Not everybody should be treated the same. And some people have good intentions for us, other people are just dissatisfied, right? And so if we're coming into a situation and, you know, let's say, um, you know, you're looking for somebody to support you in, you know, whatever you've received from God, or you're looking for insight, right? I heard this now I need to confirm it. I'm looking for that wise counsel from other people. That's a fantastic thing to look for. But you want to make sure that that person is in a good place. I don't want to go looking for people that are angry, frustrated, bitter, right? They don't serve me in being happy or healthy. I sure as heck don't want to trust them to encourage me or guide me. So you want wise counsel, right? If you're looking for somebody that's going to help you with schoolwork, do you want the person that's got the A or the person that's got the F? It's one of those of, we need to be mindful of who can help us, both in their ability as far as their emotional and mental capability, right? Are they an encourager or are they a discourager? How do they talk? And so let's say, like with Stingray wants somebody to come alongside and encourage him. Well, Darrion, if you're speaking life and you're speaking encouragement and I'm speaking negativity, who would be the best person to come alongside a Stingray to encourage him to get to where he's going? It'd be you, right? And so it's that same thing. Be mindful of who you trust. And, if they're a good fit, fantastic. Go to them. And if they're not, don't take on any guilt or shame of, hey, I really want to, but I'm worried because I'm not trusting them. If they're not a good fit, they're not a good fit. You're again, boundaries. You've got to be mindful of who's good around you and let them in closer. And you don't have to, if I'm looking to you, Darrion, and going, hey, I want to go this direction, but I'm still testing out the relationship, put out small stuff. Don't put out stuff that, if you're testing the relationship, that's going to be devastating, right? We've all had people betray our trust and put stuff out there and gossip. If you find somebody that's a gossiper, you obviously don't want to trust them with what's going on, but put stuff out there that's smaller, that's less important and less vital to find out if that person is safe, and then move forward as you find out that they are. Yeah, sure. Mm, yeah. So moving from depressed to daring is not an overnight thing, and I'm sure you're probably surprised by that. But the first thing is realizing that you're in a place where you're fighting depression, right? That is a journey that I've been on, and that's why my heart is there. Because when we're depressed, we don't want to take action. Like I was playing video games 12 to 14 hours a day to medicate and not be aware of the pain, the frustration, the depression, disappointment. So stepping away from being isolated. If I'm in my house, my bedroom, all alone, there's nothing there that's going to pull me in to engage me in something that's going to get me out of depression. So being around people that are healthy again, that are positive, we don't need other Eeyores or downers, but going out even when we don't want to go out is one way to step out of it. The physical activity, right? So I may not feel like going to the gym. I may not even feel like taking a walk, but taking that first step. And it could be something as simple as, today I'm going to lace up my shoes. I'm just going to put my shoes on. I'm not going to go for that walk. It makes it easier to take the next step as you complete a step. But in just saying, I'm going to take this next step and fulfilling it, completing it, you're setting a pattern of telling yourself the truth. And so often we will say like, hey, I'm going to stick with this New Year's resolution, and we don't. And the repeated lies and the unmet expectations almost creates like concrete feet, right? It keeps us in place and we don't move. So if we want to see movement out of depression to being daring in our life and taking that adventure, it starts with small steps that seem inconsequential, right? They seem like they don't even matter. But oftentimes it's not until we start moving that we see the significance. And so get out of your isolation, make promises to yourself that you keep. And like I said, put your shoes on to go out for a walk. And over that a week's period, step out the door, just go down 2 houses, then go down 5 houses, but make it to where it's steps that you know that you're going to be able to complete. It's almost like a recipe, breaking it down, right? Put it into small little incremental steps and keep those commitments to yourself. Build trust with yourself is in essence what you're doing. And so, but removing yourself from isolation, asking for help, which is scary, admitting that I have a problem where I'm feeling depressed as somebody else, that's where building community around you of trusted people is a great thing. Don't wait until you're depressed. Do it today. And talking about it, you will see that, depression is something that has become more prevalent as we've been isolated, right? We haven't returned to school in the same way. School for you could be very different than it was 2 years ago. And, it not being the same way you want it to be can cause anxiety, frustration, depression. Be ready to trust other people and step into it and do your best. You're not looking for perfection. Just like I'm not going to be going back to the gym and going, I'm going to bench press 400. I may start with, 50 pounds, but I'm at least doing something. Celebrate the movement and go, hey, that was fantastic. I did this. Those celebrations and the acknowledgement of the progress that you're making helps to build that momentum to get you moving. It's almost like, trying to push a car uphill is really hard when it's one person, but as you ask for help and there's more and more people pushing that car, you're going to find that car is moving, even though it's uphill, right? So, just start with one step and go from there. Yeah. Okay. A great question. All right. So, we need to keep ourselves in a healthy place, both in our own stuff, and in, those that we're pursuing. Like we talked about having those people that are elevating us, right? The healthy relationships. We need to pursue those. So the outside and the inner work, like we talked about, habits, affirmations, and just making sure that we're whole and on that road to progress. If we're not in a good place, we're not able to help anybody. What is it that we hear, flight attendants tell us when we're on an airplane? What do they tell you as far as a mask? Put it. Yeah. And then put it on, like your children afterwards, right? So they're telling parents, put your mask on first, because if I pass out, I can't put it on my kid or my grandkid, right? It's like, now what happens? So you've got to care for yourself, but it's also one of those that from the healthy places where you can reach back and try and help people. Now, understand you're not going to be able to help everybody else. There were multiple seasons of my life where you could not have helped me if you wanted to, because I have to want the help. And aside from that, it's like, if I'm not in a place to accept it, I'm not going to move. And I've had family and friends that haven't wanted the help, and I can reach out to them, but I have to understand that it's not my responsibility, nor does it impact my worth for them to move. So if I reach out, like Darrion, if you reached out to me and I say, nope, I don't want to participate, I don't want to change, that's not on you. That's on me. But it's still amazing and loving that you reach out, but you have to be in a healthy place yourself first. Does that help? Okay. Hmm. Stingray, what would you prefer? Let's work from there. What would you prefer, and tell me why? Because I think you already know the answer on this one, my friend. And it can just be as simple as like encouraging or honest, just to communicate it back. Perfect. And that is a hard thing, Stingray. Like, we're often going to be told stuff we don't want to hear. But if we get that stuff, that it's like, hey, you know what, Mike, you really need to work on this area of life. I've seen this where you're not loving your kids, you're not loving your wife, you're doing this thing and it's communicating this incorrectly. If I don't have a friend that tells me that, then I can't correct it. And if I don't correct, I'm still continuing to hurt the person. And it could be me hurting me, right? So if I'm taking a test at school, and it's like, here's the math test, and I get an okay, hey, this is an A, but you didn't really understand what you're doing. Man, as I continue on in life, I'm still working from that deficit. It's a lie and a false expectation, or a misbelief, right? A bad belief that I'm working from. I want to work from truth. And as long as that honest friend is doing it from love, like with good intention, that's a great friend to hold on to. Having somebody who tells you honest stuff, not from a caring place, is truly not a healthy friend, right? To be told, hey, Mike, you're treating your wife poorly, it can be done from a way of hurting me, to try and say, hey, you think you're doing great, but really you suck. That's not what you want. You want the friend that's going to come along and say, do this a little differently and go from here, and help, is even willing to help you along. So I hope that helps, Stingray. Great question. My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Darrion. I appreciate it, man. Yes, living fearless today. You got it. You're spot on, my friend. And Darrion, I mean, this goes for you and anybody that's here, like Stingray. I think it's Sean. Like, if you guys have questions, man, you're hitting a roadblock, you've got something that you're wanting to ask, hit me up on the DMs. You can reach me on Instagram or Facebook, and just reach out, because there's no reason to keep yourself in a place where you don't feel like you can ask. But I would encourage you, like we talked about, look for people that you can trust and start putting stuff out there, because you're going to want to have those kind of relationships, that community around you. But reach out. You can hit me up at hi, as in hello, Coach Mike. So HICOACHMIKE. And Darrion has put in the podcast there, man. Listen from other people's mistakes. You know, you don't have to repeat the same ones that I and these other guys have. Stingray set you up. Remember, come at it from love, though, Stingray. Come at it from love, man. You want me to put it in the chat there? Let's see. Where do I... Oh, I don't. Can I? I don't know that I can, my friend. It doesn't look like I can make that. Here. Yeah. Oops. So you can do that one, or there's just the simplified version of it. And I love that you guys are looking into this. Keep pressing in, man. So people, books, podcasts, all that. Just keep pushing in. And if you've already got these relationships over here, man, just keep encouraging and growing each other. My pleasure, Darrion. Thank you. Darrion, you still there, buddy? Okay. Are we in the green room? We're back outside of the regular stream.